Her sleeve slipped for half a second, enough for Randy Klein to see the cut that hadn't healed, the kind of wound that tells a story. She covered it fast, eyes down, voice steady. But Randy had built his empire on noticing what others missed. And tonight, he noticed her fear and something else hiding behind it. The penthouse was silent, bathed in cold blue light spilling from the skyline beyond the arched windows. Somewhere far below, New York hummed. Sirens, engines, the low rhythm of a city that never slept. But up here, time stood still. Before we dive into this story, tell me where you are watching from and what time is it. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button, like and share. Randy Klein sat at his desk, sleeves rolled, reviewing ledgers filled with more sin than math. He wasn't a man who missed details. Not in his books, not in people. That was how he'd survived. When Christine Baca walked in, he didn't lift his eyes immediately. He'd learned to let silence do the watching. "Your drink, sir?" she said softly, voice barely more than a breath. Her tone was even, practiced, like someone who'd spent her whole life rehearsing calm. He glanced up then. The glass in her hand caught the light, trembling ever so slightly. She placed it on the coaster with mechanical care, aligning it perfectly with the edge of the desk, then turned to leave. That's when the fabric shifted. A pale wrist, a faint red gash, a trace of dried blood clinging to the edge of the sleeve. Randy's gaze froze on it. Christine noticed and hesitated, just for a heartbeat, the smallest crack in an otherwise perfect mask. Then she pulled the sleeve down so fast it almost looked like flinching. "I cut myself on the glass," she murmured before he could ask. "It's nothing." Randy leaned back, studying her. "You're sure?" "Yes, sir." "Funny thing," he said, eyes narrowing slightly. "I don't recall any glass breaking tonight." Her throat tightened. "Then it must have been earlier." Randy didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. He'd seen 1,000 liars before, rivals, politicians, even priests. But Christine's lie wasn't the usual kind. It didn't come from greed or ambition. It came from terror. When she finally excused herself and disappeared down the long hall, Randy stayed where he was. The faint scent of cleaning powder and soap lingered in the air. Sterile, controlled, like her. He turned in his chair toward the window. The city's reflection shimmered faintly across the glass. Bright, indifferent. "Christine Baca," he said quietly to himself, tasting the name like an unsolved riddle. He reached for his phone. "Mason," he said when the line picked up. "The new maid. I want everything on her. Now." A pause. "What are we looking for?" Randy's eyes followed the faint smear of blood she'd left on the coaster. "Anything that explains why she's lying to me," he said, "and why she's carrying a scar that looks like it fought back." He ended the call, eyes still fixed on that mark, small, human, and dangerous. Some wounds fade, others infect everything they touch, and by the time he discovered which kind hers was, it would already be too late. The call from Mason came just after dawn. "Got something?" he said. "You'll want to see it yourself." Randy hadn't slept. The city had shifted from midnight blue to the gray of early morning, the kind that made the skyline look like a confession half swallowed by fog. He sat with his drink untouched, eyes tracing the faint smear of blood still on the coaster. By the time Mason arrived, the penthouse was silent again. The man dropped a thick envelope on the table. "Our maid," he said, "or whoever she really is." Randy opened it slowly, page by page. Christine Baca, 28. No family on record, no bank account, no social footprint, no medical history before 18 months ago. It was like she had appeared out of thin air. "Fake ID?" Randy asked. "Everything about her's fake," Mason replied. "But there's one photo that's real." Randy looked up. Mason slid a worn photograph across the table. Two people stood in the frame, younger, smiling, sunlight in their eyes. One of them was Christine. The other was Calvin Red Bucker. The name hit Randy like a shot to the chest. He knew that face. He remembered the night Red died, the warehouse, the echo of gunfire, the accusation that still lived in his head. "You're killing the wrong man." The room went cold. Mason spoke again, careful. "She's his sister, Randy. Christine Bucker, the sister of the man you buried in Staten Island without a name." Randy's fingers tightened around the photograph until the edges creased. He didn't speak for a long time. Only the ticking of the clock filled the space between them. "Leave it," Randy said finally, his voice a low rasp. "And don't mention this to anyone." When Mason left, Randy poured himself another drink but didn't touch it. He just stared at Christine's face in the photo, her eyes full of the kind of warmth he'd never seen in her now. By nightfall, he'd called her to his office. Christine entered quietly, hands clasped in front of her apron. The blue city light framed her, the same hue as the bruises on her wrist. She didn't look afraid this time, just tired. "You've been busy," Randy said. "New name, new life." She said nothing. "Why hide your name?" His tone was calm, deliberate. "Or should I ask, why hide his?" Her jaw tensed. "Because the man who killed my brother still works for you." The words landed between them like a blade. For a long moment, neither moved. Randy's pulse was steady, but something inside him cracked, a soundless recognition of ghosts he thought he'd buried for good. When Christine finally turned to leave, her reflection flickered against the glass. Fragile, defiant, haunting. Randy watched her go, the storm already building behind his eyes, and somewhere deep inside his chest, he heard it. The quiet knock of old sins, demanding to be let back in. The mansion felt colder that week. Not from weather, from silence, the kind that slips between walls and makes every step echo louder than it should. Randy's world was starting to unravel in small, precise ways. Shipments delayed, accounts short, men whispering when they thought he wasn't listening. Paranoia was spreading through his empire like frost through glass. And through it all, Christine moved as she always did. Soundless, invisible, careful. But now he noticed the bruises were darker. New ones. Fingertip marks on her arms, a scrape along her jaw. Someone had grabbed her recently. He caught her reflection once, late in the hall mirror, eyes swollen, movements sluggish. "Who's hurting you?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer, just lowered her gaze and kept walking, the bucket in her hand sloshing with water that looked almost red in the light. By the fourth night, Randy hadn't slept. The tension in the air was coiled and sharp. Mason was gone on cleanup work, and the penthouse felt like a trap. Too still, too aware. He decided to go home early. Something in his gut told him to. The elevator doors slid open onto silence. The lights were dim. The faint scent of bleach clung to the air. Then he heard it, a muffled sob, followed by the scrape of cloth against marble. Randy stepped into the corridor, hand instinctively brushing the inside of his jacket. He turned the corner and froze. Christine was on her knees in the middle of the atrium, scrubbing furiously at the floor. Her hands were shaking, streaked crimson to the wrists. A body lay a few feet away. One of his guards, blood spreading beneath him in a widening halo. She looked up, eyes wild. "Please, I can explain." Randy's voice dropped into something cold, lethal. "Who did this?" She pressed the cloth harder into the stain, tears falling fast. "He wasn't your guard." "What?" Her voice cracked. "He was one of my brother's men. I was trying to get him out before they found him." Randy's breath stilled. The world tilted. "Who's they?" She shook her head. "The ones who framed Red. They knew he was innocent, but they killed him anyway, and now they're killing anyone who can prove it. The dying man let out a low, gurgled sound. Christine tried to hold him up, blood smearing across her uniform. He mouthed something Randy couldn't hear. Just a single name, whispered like confession before death. Then stillness. Christine sat back slowly, trembling, staring at the blood between her knees. "You killed my brother," she whispered, her voice thin, breaking. "For something he didn't do." Randy looked down at the floor, at the blood she was trying so desperately to erase. For the first time, he realized whose sins she had really been cleaning all along. The marble gleamed red beneath them, and no matter how hard she scrubbed, it would never come clean. Randy didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. The blood on the marble had dried, but the echo of Christine's words hadn't. "You killed my brother for something he didn't do." By morning, the city below was still wrapped in fog, silent, heavy, unforgiving. Mason returned with files, encrypted drives, transaction logs pulled from every corner of Randy's empire. One by one, Randy went through them. Hours turned into a slow dissection of loyalty. And beneath every ledger, every coded message, one name kept resurfacing: Vega. Martin Vega, his consigliere, his oldest friend, the man who'd been by his side when Red Baka was executed, the man who had whispered the accusation of betrayal into Randy's ear 2 years ago. Now, the pattern was clear. Every shipment that vanished, every crew ambushed, every financial leak, all of it traced back to Vega's quiet orchestration. Randy sat still, jaw locked. The realization came with a bitter chill that sank deep into his bones. He hadn't killed a traitor. He'd killed a loyal man, and Vega had built his throne on that lie. By dusk, Christine hadn't spoken to anyone. She moved through the house with a distant calm, as if each step was part of a goodbye she'd already rehearsed. She knew. Vega knew she knew. That made her next. When she entered her small room, she found her bag already half-packed, clothes folded, identification tucked away, the faint smell of fear heavy in the air. She picked up the framed photo of her and Red, his arm around her shoulder, both smiling, and slipped it inside. Her reflection in the mirror didn't look like a maid anymore. It looked like someone who'd survived too long to trust survival again. Across the mansion, Randy stood in his office, staring out over the city. Vega entered without knocking, confident, smooth, the same way he always had. "You've been busy," Randy said. "Cleaning up your mess," Vega replied, casual. "What's this about?" Randy turned slowly, eyes cold. "You used me to kill an innocent man." Vega smirked, the kind that came from a man who'd never been caught before. "And you were too blind to see it. Don't blame me for your guilt, Randy. You pulled the trigger." For a moment, the room was pure silence. Then Randy stepped closer, voice low, dangerous. "You framed him. You used my name to build your own kingdom, and now you're going to answer for it." Vega's smile didn't fade. "You won't live long enough to make me." He left with the calm of someone who already owned the ending. Christine reached the elevator doors just as Randy appeared in the corridor. His voice stopped her. "You're not running," he said quietly. "Not while I'm breathing." Her hand trembled over the call button. "He'll kill me." Randy stepped closer, his gaze steady. "You're under my roof now. That means I protect you." For the first time, Christine met his eyes fully. Fear and defiance locking in silent war. Behind her reflection in the glass, lightning flared across the skyline. And in that split-second flash, neither could tell if the storm was outside or already between them. The storm outside hadn't passed. It only moved inward. Randy could feel it in the air, the static charge between silence and suspicion. Christine moved through the mansion with lowered eyes and softer steps now, like she knew something had shifted. And she was right. Because by the next morning, Vega struck first. He arrived in Randy's office with a folder, a heavy sigh, and the performance of a loyal man carrying bad news. "I didn't want to believe it either," he said, setting the folder down. "But the proof's there." Randy flipped through the pages. Encrypted messages, dates, locations, surveillance stills showing Christine on her phone outside the penthouse gate. Each document built the same story. Christine Baca, the maid who'd wormed her way into the heart of the Klein estate, had been feeding intel to the police. Randy stared at the papers for a long time, saying nothing. He didn't trust Vega, but the evidence was too clean, too complete. The timing, perfect. And yet, her eyes. He remembered her eyes when she said, "He'll kill me." That kind of fear couldn't be faked. Could it? Still, the seed was planted, and it grew fast. That night, Randy began to watch her again, quietly, through the cameras, through the reflection of glass, through the crack in the study door when she thought she was alone. He saw her whispering on the phone once, voice low, trembling. He couldn't make out the words, just fragments. "It's not safe. He knows. I'll fix it." It didn't sound like betrayal. It sounded like desperation, but doubt was a poison, and he'd already swallowed it. Hours later, Christine returned to her small room. The air inside felt wrong, disturbed. On the floor beneath her door lay an envelope. No return mark, just her name, written in red ink. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a photograph. Her brother, Calvin Red Baca, laid out on a concrete floor, eyes open, mouth slightly parted. The same wound, the same blood stain from 2 years ago. But this time, his body had been staged, posed. Someone had been there when it happened. Someone wanted her to remember. Her knees gave out. The photo fluttered from her fingers. The message was clear. Vega wasn't just coming for her. He was erasing her brother's story for good, rewriting the past until even ghosts stopped telling the truth. When the tears dried, what was left in her eyes wasn't grief. It was resolve. Christine stood, silent and trembling, and crossed the hall to Randy's display wall, the one lined with old daggers, keepsakes from forgotten wars. She lifted one carefully, fingers curling around the handle. Its blade caught the light, cold, clean, merciless. She stood there in her blue uniform, framed by the arched windows and the night beyond. Her reflection merging with the city lights like a ghost preparing for her own reckoning. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled again, as if the storm had finally found its name. The storm finally reached the house. Thunder rolled through the glass walls like distant gunfire, lightning tearing white veins across the skyline. The mansion, once a cathedral of control, now felt like a waiting grave. Christine moved through its darkened halls barefoot, the dagger tight in her hand. Her breath came shallow, soundless, her uniform damp against her skin. She could hear them. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, spreading through the mansion like wolves closing in on their prey. Vega's men. Her pulse thundered with every flash of light. She slipped into the atrium, its vast glass ceiling glistening with rain. Moonlight flickered through the storm clouds, washing the room in shades of blue and silver. One of Vega's men stepped out from the shadows. She turned sharply. The blade caught his throat before he could speak. A muffled gasp. Then silence. He fell at her feet, his blood seeping through the cracks in the marble. She stared at her hands, shaking, horrified and alive all at once. "Your brother begged me for mercy too." The voice came from behind her, smooth, cruel, unhurried. Martin Vega stepped into the light, rainwater glistening on his suit. He looked almost calm, like this moment had been rehearsed in his mind long before tonight. "Did you think you'd get away from me, little maid?" he asked softly. "Red didn't. You should have listened when I told him loyalty is a death sentence in this business. Christine's breath hitched. Her grip tightened on the dagger. You killed him. I gave him a choice, Vega said, smiling faintly. He made the wrong one. She raised the blade. Then I'll make the right one. He tilted his head, amused. You won't get the chance. The sound of a gun being cocked stopped them both. Randy stepped out from the far end of the atrium, gun raised, eyes hard. The thunderlight framed him. Dark suit, clenched jaw, betrayal carved deep into every line of his face. Put the knife down, Christine. His voice was low, steady, dangerous. Her eyes filled with tears. He killed my brother. Vega chuckled. You see, boss? This is what happens when you let ghosts clean your house. The moment stretched. Breath, lightning, heartbeat. Then came the gunshot. Glass shattered above them, showering down like rain made of light. Vega staggered backward, a red bloom spreading across his chest. His body hit the floor with a hollow thud, his smirk still frozen in disbelief. Christine froze, the dagger slipping from her hand, clattering against the marble. Randy lowered his smoking gun, the thunder outside echoing his pulse. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of rain hitting glass, blood sliding across stone, and the soft sob of a woman who had run out of tears. Under the mansion's glowing windows, Randy and Christine stood framed, two survivors of the same sin, drowning in the same blue light. And though the storm outside began to fade, inside it had only just begun. The echo of the gunshot lingered long after the thunder stopped. For the first time in years, the mansion was truly silent. Vega's body lay motionless across the marble floor, blood spreading in slow, uncertain rivers. The storm outside had spent itself, leaving only the soft hum of the city through the glass walls. Randy stood still, gun lowered, the smoke curling from the barrel like a ghost reluctant to leave. Christine knelt a few feet away, her blue uniform soaked in blood that wasn't hers. Her breath came in short, shaking bursts. When she looked up, her face was pale, her eyes wide and glassy. You used me. Randy didn't answer at first. He simply watched her, the tremor in her voice, the accusation hanging in the air between them heavier than the smell of gunpowder. I saved you, he said finally, quietly. Christine shook her head, rising slowly to her feet. No, you saved yourself. Her voice broke halfway through the words, but she kept going. You let him live long enough to bury my brother. You let him wear your suit, eat at your table, run your business, while you called my brother a traitor. Randy's jaw tightened, but his eyes didn't waver. I believed what I was told. That's not belief, she hissed. That's convenience. The dagger lay near her foot, Vega's blood drying along the edge. She bent down and picked it up, the weight of it grounding her trembling hands. The blade caught the light, a streak of silver cutting through the dim blue room. She stepped closer. He didn't move. When she pressed the dagger to his chest, it wasn't with anger. It was grief turned solid, the kind that didn't know where else to go. The metal pressed against his shirt, just above his heart. Do you even feel it? She whispered. Randy's gaze didn't flinch. Every day. Your brother's name is cleared now, he said. You can live. Christine's lips trembled, but her eyes hardened. Not until every last one of them pays. The dagger quivered in her grip. Her hand dropped slightly, exhaustion replacing fury. For a moment, the two of them stood there, breathing the same air, sharing the same ghosts. Then Christine loosened her fingers. The blade slipped from her hand and fell to the marble floor with a sound that seemed to echo forever. A single, ringing note of surrender and defiance all at once. She looked at Randy one last time, not with hate, but with something quieter, something final. Then she turned and walked barefoot through the blood, leaving faint crimson footprints behind her as she disappeared down the hall. Randy watched her go, every step she took peeling another layer off his silence. The rain had stopped outside, but inside, everything was still drowning. Morning came softly. Too softly for a house that had seen so much blood. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled like it. The sky outside was pale gray, washed clean, the kind of light that made everything inside the mansion look like an echo. Randy walked through the halls in silence. His footsteps were the only sound. The marble gleamed again, spotless, as if the night before had been a fever dream. No trace of Vega, no trace of her. The atrium floor, where glass had shattered and blood had spilled, now shone under the early sun. Even the cracks seemed gone. He found it in the kitchen, the only sign she'd ever been there. Christine's blue uniform folded neatly on the counter, the fabric pressed, perfect, precise, just like she'd worn it, and lying across it, the dagger. Clean, polished, gleaming like it had never known blood. For a long time, Randy said nothing. He just stood there, the sound of the refrigerator hum filling the empty space where her quiet breathing used to be. Then Mason stepped into the doorway. His voice was low, careful. "Should I burn it?" Randy shook his head slowly. "No, leave it." Mason hesitated. "She's gone, boss. Vanished. No calls, no traces. Like she was never real." Randy's eyes stayed on the dagger. "Oh, she's real." He reached out and touched the hilt. Not to take it, just to feel the cold metal beneath his fingers. It was colder than steel had a right to be. Days passed. Then the whispers began. Vega's old crew, the men who'd followed his orders, who'd profited from Red Bacca's death, started turning up dead. One in Queens, one in Staten Island, another found slumped in a car on the Hudson. No witnesses, no suspects, just precision, every kill clean, surgical, silent. The underworld started talking, in hushed tones, half in fear, half in awe. They said she wore a maid's uniform, that she moved like a shadow, that her face was pale, her eyes hollow, her hands steady as she wiped the blood from her blade before vanishing again. Some called her the Ghost Cleaner, others called her Red's Revenge. Randy didn't believe myths. But one morning, when the doorman brought in the mail, there was an envelope with no name. He opened it slowly. Inside was a single Polaroid. A man's body sprawled across concrete, throat cut. One of Vega's lieutenants. Scrawled in red ink across the bottom were 2 words. Still cleaning. Randy stared at it for a long time, his pulse steady, unreadable. Then he set the photo down beside the dagger on the counter. Outside, the wind shifted. Faint, almost like a whisper moving through the city. And for a moment, he thought he could hear her voice in it. Not a goodbye. Not a threat. Just a promise kept too well. Weeks passed, though time no longer felt like something Randy could count. The mansion had returned to order. Spotless floors, silent halls, the smell of polish where blood had once lingered. But no matter how many times the staff cleaned, something invisible remained. The ghost of her. Every night, Randy found himself at the same place. The arched windows where Christine once stood, hands steady, eyes lost somewhere in the city beyond. He could still see her reflection there if he looked long enough. Not as she'd left, but as she'd been before the blood, before the storm. He'd told himself she was gone. Vanished into the dark like a secret the city wanted to keep. But the envelopes kept arriving, 3 so far, each unmarked, each containing a single photograph. A body, another man from Vega's circle, always the same red ink written across the bottom. Still cleaning. It had become her ritual, her confession, her revenge. That morning, the 4th envelope came. The paper was wet from the mist, edges curling. Randy opened it slowly, knowing before he saw. The photo inside was different. The man lying dead wasn't one of Vega's lieutenants. He was Vega's brother, the final thread, the last name, and beneath the photo, written in the same blood-red scrawl. This one was for Red. Randy stared at it for a long time. There was no satisfaction in it, no relief. Just a heavy kind of silence that filled the room like smoke. He walked to the liquor cabinet and poured 2 drinks. His usual whiskey. Neat. He set one glass beside the other on the table by the window. One for himself, one for a ghost. Outside, the city stretched endlessly. Cold steel and fading light. The same skyline she used to stare at every morning before anyone else woke. He lifted his glass halfway to his lips, but stopped when he caught his reflection in the window, and hers behind him. Not real, but real enough. Her figure faint, shimmering in the glass. Bruised, steady, unbroken. The same woman who'd stood by that window, sleeve slipping down, pretending to be invisible. He turned slightly, half expecting to hear her voice, that small, measured calm she carried like armor. But there was nothing. Only the faint hum of the city below, the echo of a storm long past. He raised the glass toward her reflection and whispered, "You got what you came for." The city lights flickered, catching the glint of the empty glass beside his own. And for a brief, impossible moment, he swore he saw her hand lift, just enough to toast him back. Then she was gone again, swallowed by the night beyond the glass. Randy stood there a long time, eyes on the skyline, heart heavier than the silence that followed. She disappeared into the dark, but her shadow never left his house.